my life fades, the vision dims. All that remains are memories. I remember a time of chaos, ruined dreams, this wasted land. But most of all, I remember the road warrior, the man we called Max.
Greetings from the Humongous, the Lord Humongous, the warrior of the wasteland, the Ayatollah of rock and roller.
You're listening to
Don and his amazing friend.
I'm gravely disappointed.
This is a land that prays for a hero.
You want to get out of here? You talk to me.
Pray that he's still out there. Somewhere. Mad Max 2.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much for listening. I am Amazing Friend Mike.
And I am Don, haver of the Amazing Friend.
So we are at Kennedy Miller Present, and we are going to be pressing play right now. And 3, 2, 1, we are pressing play.
Okay, so we're rolling now. Did we already see who did the music?
We are at Mel Gibson Inn.
We're at Mel Gibson Inn because I had a question. It says music by Brian May. Is that the Brian May from Queen?
It is not. This is I had to look it up. This is Brian May is a movie composer, producer who died in 1997. Who the score for this movie is absolutely phenomenal. The pacing and the different themes that they get going throughout the movie itself are very solidly done. Screenplay by Terry Hayes, George Miller, Brian Hanott. We will talk about that as we go through the movie. One of the things that I found fairly interesting as we were going through the credits was director of photography, Dean Semler. Dean Semler, 76 movies to his credit for photography, including Beyond Thunderdome, Dead Calm, Waterworld, Apocalypto, City Slickers, and Dean Semler also won the Oscar for cinematography for Dances with Wolves.
Waterworld. That's a Mad Max ripoff that I forgot all about.
Very, very much so. So what we're looking at now here is an original introduction that if you were in Australia or parts of the world where Mad Max had a strong theatrical release, you would not have seen. This introduction here was made for U.S. theaters where Mad Max did not receive a heavy theatrical release, and the distributor was afraid people would not go to see the movie if it was titled Mad Max 2. So an intro was created with some black and white footage to kind of explain to them the collapse of society, how the world of Mad Max was incorporated into it as far as the death of his child and his wife, who either died or was certainly comatose at the end of the original Mad Max, and how Mad Max ends up going from an MFP law enforcement officer to wandering the wasteland.
This is a brilliant mix of stock footage ranging from, it looks like industrial films of just oil rigs, like maybe from an oil company safety video, or like a kid's movie, like a science movie, like this is how oil works, to they were storming the beaches of Normandy, it looks like. So you get some World War II. We're now seeing footage of riots in the streets, looting, people throwing a row of theater seats.
We can certainly...
It's just chaos. It's lots and lots of chaos. And soon there's tanks. Soon footage from the Mad Max movie will be spliced in, mixed in with this.
And you can, whether you look at that footage and go, that was what really happened or not, globally we can all appreciate these times in our society because we've gone through this numerous times. Wars, politicians constantly debating and arguing things. And then, yes, now we have the Mad Max footage incorporated into it. And then there's young Max behind his V8 Interceptor.
So what is the character Max? What is his background? What did happen in the first movie?
He a police officer living on the edge, who was the officer that you really brought in to help track down and run down some of the vigilantes who were ruling the highway. He kept it together because he had a wife and child at home. And then when he came across the Toe Cutters gang, they ended up killing his wife and child. Max tracked them all down, killed them, wandered into the wasteland. He had nothing left to ground him. So he's out in the wasteland when the official collapse of society occurs. Now, at this point in the movie, we're fading to black at the highway, and we're going to open with a helicopter shot coming down on the highway. And this is where, for global audiences, the movie actually begins, pulling out from the supercharger blower on the hood of his V8 Interceptor. Just look at some of these panoramic shots that Dean Semler pulls off of the speeding white-lined highway, the gangs of the Humongous as they're coming up behind the vehicle here. This is some stellar shots, and widescreen-wise, it's perfect. This is why you have a widescreen movie or theater, to see some of these panoramic visuals.
So we have lots of quick cuts, lots of tight shots. These are cars actually driving down the road. This is the kind of thing Tarantino was going for when he did his Grindhouse movie, where he wanted real photography, real cameras on real cars, high speed down the road.
And you know what? There's a sense of danger. There's a sense of kinetic energy, but there's a sense of danger when you see this, because again, you're not dealing with the CGI world, and this is the kind of stuff that can get your pulse pounding and your heart beating really fast. And you're right, Tarantino did an outstanding job with Death Proof. Here we have the great shot here of the gang closing in on both sides of Max, and he's going to outsmart them. The movie was actually scripted to begin with Max driving by a farmhouse where Wes, the red mohawk wearing member of the gang, and a variety of vehicles were basically raping and pillaging. And they chased Max down, and there was 10 vehicles, and the idea was there was a time lapse, and then you could see the 10 vehicles had eventually drifted down to just the 2 cars and the 1 motorcycle, to give you the idea that Max had managed to outsmart or take out all the other vehicles. He just took out the last 2 cars, and then here he is about to have his little mid-road show-off with Wes here. That's a phenomenal shot there, the Mundi Mundi lookout sign there in Australia. Pretty famous location here out in the Broken Hill area. On the tanker truck there in the background, we have the vermin have inherited the earth painted on the side. The Golden Youth. Did you ever pick up on this as a kid?
No.
The boy with the chain around his neck, who is clearly the bottom of the homosexual relationship between. I never caught this as a teen, but certainly it's very evident as an adult watching it that okay, he's got his young blonde bottom chained up to him and to his bike, and that guy's not going anywhere whether he wants to or not.
And if there's any question of their relationship, the way. The reaction when what happens to our bottom happens to him later, the reaction, you definitely know this is...
The movies, the Mad Max movies obviously were influenced by the 1973 oil crisis, and I think that came across very strongly when Mad Max was using a cloth to pick up the dripping gasoline, and even as he's watching Wes pull an arrow from his arm, he's more concerned right now with the dripping gas than what's taking place. Great scene here of... as Wes is getting on his motorcycle to come after Max. Max is drawing his shotgun to let him know, bring it on. We don't get the reveal till later to find out that Max has no shells in that shotgun, to show you the strength of and the courage of the character, that he's not going to flee, he's not going to run. He's going to stand there with an empty shotgun, and hopefully the other guy is going to blink.
Is the dog in the first one?
The dog is not in the first one. The dog is kind of a pickup here for this film to show that he has a slight, a little bit of affection left. Not a whole lot, but certainly enough for this animal that the animal comes along with him. The Mad Max character, obviously, very archetypical, like a Western. Shane, 1953, or the Clint Eastwood Man with No Name trilogy, where the general plot here, the Road Warrior, is going to involve a drifter who's caught up in a battle that really he has no stake in, he has no concern for, which is, again, why I went back to my father, who loved those Westerns, this movie is just a post-apocalyptic Western, and it worked for my father because he bonded with this film very quickly, and that's very evident why.
So he's picking up the music box here, and it's playing a lullaby. Is it Happy Birthday? We have to have the sound off for various reasons to record this. Is it Happy Birthday?
Mm-hmm. And he gives you, there's a couple moments here where he has that slight, Mel Gibson's acting is really strong in this film since there's no dialogue really. He's only got 16 lines of dialogue, but he'll give you a couple little kind of views from his eyes, a little bit of remembrance or emotional, and then he has a couple of these, like George Miller refers to them as his Mona Lisa grin, where Max never really smiles, but he gives you just a slight grin from time to time. So then again, look, I mean, just what a great shot of the Australian outback with the car, the dust trail as the V8 Interceptor's approaching, and you get that vibe of this is just the day-to-day existence of Max. We're just driving around and wondering if we're going to stumble upon something, and here we are stumbling upon the gyrocopter.
What is the history of this car to Mad Max? He was a police officer. Was this kind of the police cruiser in his world? I remember it was stored in his garage.
This was like
when he resorts to everything, when he puts back his old uniform and stuff, and out comes the car.
Yeah, this is the one he kind of stole from the police garage. Originally, the police force had basically been killed, even though they didn't show it on camera. So he was kind of the last member of that police force, and he took this vehicle for the finale of Mad Max. The car itself is a 1973 Ford Falcon XB GT Coupe, currently on display in Cars of the Stars Motor Museum in England. Only 949 Ford Falcons were ever made. Now, if we're looking here...
Of that year, you mean?
Yes. If we're looking here at the gyrocopter, obviously we have the topless Playboy centerfold there on the back end. You fans of Playboy will recognize her as Karen Price, who was Miss January 1981.
And there is a snake in the middle of this gyrocopter. And the first time I saw this moment, and then out pops...
Bruce Spence is the gyro captain.
Bruce Spence as the gyro captain. When I first saw this when I was a kid, I thought, what a strange thing to place in the center of your trap, a snake. Like the cheese in the mouse trap, except this time it's a snake. And how long was he hiding in that dirt?
Well, to stay out of the sun, it's probably the only thing he really could do. The snake itself is a bull snake, so not venomous at all. But it's a nice exchange here. Bruce Spence clearly is going to be... He's going to be the character that we're going to kind of connect with a little bit here. He's going to be a little bit of our comic relief, a little bit of our sidekick. He's going to kind of get the plot rolling here, where he's going to get Max to where Max needs to be, which is at the compound. If you were looking at his fingers, though, on the crossbow, he clearly doesn't know how to shoot the crossbow, because if he shoots it now, that rope is going to chop off the top half of his fingers.
Oh, yeah, because his hand is on top. Now, this character, though he is pointing a crossbow at Max's head, he's no threat. He's just another guy out there trying to survive.
He is,
and he also has a pet.
He has his pet snake for sure. I like the fact, though, that they don't, as much as his mannerisms are goofy, he's not stupid, and they make that very clear, and that gives us a little bit of respect for him, where Max is going to kill him here. He's got the knife, and he's going to kill him, and the gyro captain is smart enough to go, if you're a quick guy with reflexes, I bet you've got a weapon under the car. So we get the nice shot here of Max shutting off the bomb that's hooked up to his gas tanks. That's going to obviously play out for us later in the movie.
He's smart enough to survive in these conditions, just like Max. He's surviving on his own, unlike what is the gang called in this?
The Humongous gang.
The Humongous gang.
They call them in the script. They call them Marauders. He refers to them a few times as his dogs of war.
Okay.
I guess we could talk here about...
They sort of need each other, where these guys can live on their own.
We can talk a little bit here, since the dog just saved the day, about Max's dog, who's simply referred to as Dog. He's a blue heeler. They had actually rescued him from a pound. He was basically the next day he was set to be euthanized when the producers found him and rescued him. Blue heelers are obviously cattle dogs, sheep dogs there in Australia. And he responded well to commands, and he seemed to be trainable. Through a lot of the movie, the producers actually had to put earplugs in the dog's ears because the roar of a lot of the vehicles upset the dog himself. But a good character, and this is a nice gag again, especially on a repeat viewing, when you know that the shotgun itself is empty, so he's got it hooked up with the dog bone and the wire, and the gyro captain's all nervous here, even though he is shackled down, and it's just there's no shells in the gun, so there's nothing to be worried about.
No, Max's car is full of stuff because they're at that kind of scavenger type of life. This kind of thing reminds me of The Road, the Cormac McCarthy book, where you have your shopping cart and just whatever you can find that's useful you throw in there. All post-apocalyptic stories have this. This scenery, the way they're dressed, and the fact that there's a dog it gives me nightmares about the we looked it up before that we started recording, but it turns 1975-ish movie A Boy and His Dog with Don Johnson, which I watched back when I had On TV, and we've talked about On TV before, and it's really terrible, and the dog talks, but it's more like a telepathic thing, so the dog doesn't move its mouth or anything. The dog there's just a voice over when there are scenes with the dog, but the boy, Don Johnson, he talks to the dog. It looks a lot like this. It makes me think George Miller has definitely seen that movie. Whenever I see binocular shot like we're looking at right now, I always expect a Tusken Raider to walk in a close up close and attack our viewer.
They have done in the Blu-ray here. They've cleaned up a few errors in the movie on some of the original binocular and telescope shots. The black background had not been blocked enough so you could still slightly see the movie in the black areas, and on the Blu-ray they've darkened that enough. Get our first shot there of the humongous that we'll talk about in Wes as they're having their exchange, and you can see how agitated Wes is that somebody actually escaped him, that caused the death of gang members and got away, and the humongous is trying to calm him down. It's an interesting film when you watch it because our main hero Max and our main bad guy of Wes are really just pawns of two other warring leaders. Papagawa in the compound, who represents the more passive faction of humanity, and then the humongous representing the vicious gang that's taken over the highway. They are both just pawns in this larger plot that's playing out around them.
As you are watching this in recent years, does Humongous and the way he talks, not the sound of his voice, but the dialogue that he uses, are you feeling that he was completely ripped off for the way they characterized Bane in The Dark Knight Rises? You could take every word that Lord Humongous says and say it like a cartoon walrus, and it would sound just like Bane from The Dark Knight Rises.
That's interesting. If you go on YouTube, you can actually see clips of the movie, and I don't know if these were clips that were done before post-production or not, but he's actually accented. He's got a fairly heavy accent, and for the U.S. film, they've gruffed up the voice and they've synthed it out a little bit. I had not actually made the Bane connection before, but that's a pretty good connection. George Miller refers to the Humongous as probably a former military leader, and you can kind of pick up little bits of that in his dialogue when he's referring to the different troops on both ends of the battle. But he's very well spoken for sure, considering his burned and overly muscular and revealing appearance. Here's the classic scene of Max eating the Dinky Dye dog food. Dinky Dye is a fictitious brand of dog food, and in Australian, Dinky Dye just means genuine, so it's a joke by the producers. But in interviews, George Miller has said he has no clue what Mel Gibson was actually eating, if it was dog food or not. Some rumors were that they just got some meatballs that were on set that day and kind of crushed them down for Max to eat. But I love here
Well, Mel was pretty method, though, when he was acting a lot, so he probably would have eaten dog food if they gave it to him.
Possibly. I love this scene, though, because it's basically showing us, okay, we're going to spend the day watching the war, but then you're going to see the hierarchy as the can of dog food is passed down, which is Max is going to eat first the majority of it. He's going to then pass it on to his dog, not the gyro captain. And then even though the gyro captain's going to try and get to it, the dog's not going to allow it. And so the dog eats second, and then the gyro captain is then allowed to get whatever may remain at that bottom of the can that the dog can't get to.
So we see the hierarchy, like you said, and we also see the squalid conditions in which they're living, where this guy does not mind eating after a dog. First of all, he doesn't mind eating dog food, and he doesn't mind eating dog food that a dog has licked. And here he is, and he's digging around with his... Is it his finger or that spoon he had? His fingers.
You don't know if it's that same can that he's been nursing all day, or if it's like they had a can for dinner too. But
that was one thing I wrote. Like, they only have one can, but for some reason it's bottomless.
Well, in the back of his car,
there's a case.
There's a big case of it. But the thing I like, there's this shot here of, you're going to see the gyro captain. He pulls out a napkin He dabs at his mouth with a napkin like, you just had dog food, but I'm going to still have a little bit of society left here, and I'm going to show some manners and kind of wipe my mouth clean with a little bit of a napkin that I'll tuck back into my jacket.
Well, that's his character, though. He's fashion conscious. He says something about the way Max dresses.
Yep.
He wears pink shoes and yellow pants. Like, he's fashion conscious. Is he wearing an ascot or a scarf or something?
He says, like, you guys should look in the mirror sometime that you've let yourselves go.
Right.
Here he goes. He's going to pull out that napkin.
So it makes sense. He's wearing like a flower pin to his coat.
I love that cinematography, though. Again, we're on the rise, looking down at the compound as the gang leaves for the day. These are incredible shots that you do lose in a pan and scan setting, and it really makes the movie worthwhile. Just want to touch on the fact that Mad Max 2 Road Warrior also has the distinction of having currently a 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
I noticed that. It's well earned.
It is very well earned.
Spoiler alert, we're like 10 minutes in. This movie is fucking awesome. So.
It's one of my favorites. This would be a top 10 or top 20 movie for a lifetime for me, even encompassing all genres. Road Warrior is definitely up there. If we're dealing with the sci-fi, it may even be like a top 5, top 3. Roger Ebert, in his original review of the movie, gave it 3.5 stars, and he said that it's a film of pure action and kinetic energy and one of the most relentlessly aggressive movies ever made. I love the scene here, too, as the compound is sending out their scouts, and you can just see they're screwed. Like, that gang is waiting for them, and they're pouncing on these poor people in these vehicles, and you get this nice reveal of the one scout vehicle that kind of waited a little bit longer to make their exit, hoping that the majority of the gangs are going to chase down the other people too. Certainly a frightening scene here is a young teen seeing this movie for the first time when these people wreck and fall victim to the gang. I was absolutely terrified by just the idea of kind of falling victim in a lawless land to these kind of predators.
Is this setting here at the beginning, in the voiceover at the beginning, they talk about how towns have collapsed, but I'm not under the impression that this is a washed out town. I'm under the impression that these are the people who have left a town and they've set up like a Hooverville with yurts and the like out in the middle of the Australian desert.
Very much so. And you get the idea that this compound, people drifted and banded together at the compound, very much like the Humongous gang. It's very clear that there's a lot of different factions in the gang that have kind of combined together. You see a lot of these kind of evil black leather wearing kind of quasi police officers that were clearly their own gang at one time that have kind of morphed into part of the Humongous gang. The unfortunate rape scene here that's going to take place, and with the gyro captain and Mel, you get the little comic moment there of him realizing that the gyro captain's got a better piece of equipment than he does.
So just takes it from him.
Again, that hierarchy of I'm in charge here and you're going to do what I want. And Wes and the Golden Youth loading up the crossbow. Again, just there's this no compassion whatsoever for human life. It's truly a world that exists for one purpose: gasoline. Finding gasoline and prey, and the weak are simply going to just be preyed upon by the much stronger predators of the road.
Would we have Terminator without this movie?
James Cameron says this is one of the most influential movies he'd ever seen, so I'm going to say no. And there are certainly moments when you look at the future settings of the Terminator where you think this is certainly owed a lot to Mad Max.
I mean, there are the obvious, like Class of 1984 and Class of Nukem High in those movies. There are the obvious kind of post-apocalyptic movies where they completely take this aesthetic and apply it to something in the United States or something in a high school setting or street gang kind of setting.
Vernon Wells, who just drove off on his motorcycle, the red Wes, the red mohawked villain. A lot of people will recognize him from the 1980 Commando movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, where he played the lead bad guy, Bennett, who ended up being, spoiler alert, killed by having a steam pipe thrown through his body.
Let off a little steam.
That's right. He was also the bad guy in the Dennis Quaid, Martin Short movie Inner Space, where he played Mr. Igo, who ended up being digested in Martin Short's stomach acid.
A Joe Dante movie. so I like it.
Vernon Wells also somewhat reprised his role of Wes in the John Hughes movie Weird Science, when they have the post-apocalyptic band destroy the house during the party, and basically Wes shows up on the Humongous' vehicle for Anthony Michael Hall and his buddy to try and have to feign bravery to get him to leave the party.
Nice acting there by our gyro pilot, who has just realized the lengths at which people will go through, how evil this gang truly is.
Yes, and this is this movie here is so dialogue light, but they convey so much either through action or eye movement, body language, and it's really gets a lot done on the script probably was 30 pages, if that. One of the things, too, is that George Miller actually shot the movie in chronological order. So it was the only way budget-wise on a $4 million budget that they could get a lot of this done, with some of the vehicles needing to be destroyed at different points. So the movie was 100% shot chronologically.
Counter to how every other movie is filmed, and it's especially interesting because other movies are filmed out of sequence because they're it's budget friendly to do it that way. But this movie, since there are no sets and everything takes place outside, they don't have to worry about set construction or tearing this down and rebuilding this or shooting all the scenes in this one room while we have it up. Absolutely.
Our first good close-up view here of the compound is Max is going to do his best to kind of work his way inside. Again, at this point, not much of a hero. Max is not saving this man for any reason other than to get gasoline. It's basically going to be a trade. Like, here, I brought you one of your friends back, but I'm doing it because I'm expecting you to pay me based on this arrangement that he and I have made. We have our first view of the feral kid played by Emil Minty, who, even though, again, no dialogue for the character, is going to kind of play an important role as the movie fully unfolds in front of us here.
How old is this kid supposed to be, do you think?
8, 9, but clearly he doesn't even really live in the compound. He basically lives there on the outskirts of it. He's got his little hidden tunnel to get in and out, but he doesn't talk. He doesn't really interact with the people of the compound. Max is the character that he's going to bond with. Leading the way here, we have Virginia Hay with the bow. This is her first movie. Virginia Hay, in a lot of sci-fi fare, probably most known by American audiences. There was a sci-fi show called Farscape. She played the blue-skinned alien on that show, and she was also one of the female Bond girls of the 1987 Timothy Dalton James Bond movie, The Living Daylights.
There's an immediate contrast because everybody in the compound is dressed in white.
Again, good storytelling through just what we're visually seeing here, and you're right. Just like the old westerns, the good guy's going to wear the white cowboy hat, and the bad guy's going to wear black. And when the Humongous' gang arrives, you're going to definitely see that as well.
Even their equipment is white, and there's a lot of yellow. It's just a lot of things that represent light, sunshine. This is the more pleasant place to be. These are the people they're first aid. They're taken care of. Someone here.
The majority of our budget, our $4 million budget, obviously went to building this compound. There was nothing here. This was 100% built from the ground up, and 80 vehicles were built and designed for the movie itself. So that's where our budget went. And again, today a lot of this would be done CGI, but you look at this compound here and it feels real. And it does feel like, in the future when resources are limited, you're going to have to build walls out of tires and use a moving bus as your gate to blockade yourselves in and protect you for some of the things that are going to be roaming that wasteland environment.
Seems like they would be more tan.
Or sunburned. This was winter in Australia, so even though we don't see people's breath, I've read numerous reports that as soon as filming stopped, everyone basically got winter jackets and huddled around barrels for fire for warmth, because it was so cold out in the desert when they were filming this movie. Obviously, Nathan has died, and Max's deal goes out the window with him, and the people of the compound aren't going to honor that deal. They basically view Max as pretty much no better than the Humongous' gang. He's trying to trade in human flesh for gasoline, and they're basically going to get rid of him here, and Max gets saved by the fact that the gang's going to show up, our V8 Interceptor.
And who is this Michael York-looking guy who was talking to Max with the long blonde hair?
Papagawa.
That's Papagawa.
Yeah, the leader of the compound, Mike Preston, former professional boxer in Australia, television actor mostly, does a good job as far as showing a little bit of strength here as the leader of the people of the compound who are clearly, they're at their wits' end. I don't know how long this assault has been going on from the Humongous gang, but they're basically on their last legs, unfortunately.
Max is hugging his dog here. You have to be very, very protective of your animals because people will eat any kind of animal. They're scrounging for food.
We get that view there. We have the compound has got a lot of chickens. It's got pigs. It's got goats. They've got a lot of food there inside. The only thing if you're looking at like logic flaws, the only thing that doesn't really hold up is the fact that the Humongous gang wants gas. They spend all day driving around the compound. They never seem to run out of gas, though.
I wrote that in my notes. Like they sure waste a lot of gas in their pursuit of more gas.
So, but you see here again,
and they have fuel guzzling vehicles.
Everyone preparing here for what could be the next assault. Max has been handcuffed. I love this shot here of Max standing up and the camera panning up as we get that view here of that gang. And again, the wide range of vehicles and costumes on display here. And one of the things you do have to look for is all of the scouts that were just sent out by Papagawa and the compound are all mounted now on the different vehicles. Some of them still alive, unfortunately, and some of them clearly dead, mounted to the hoods. And you can even get the one shot of one of the gang members with the meat cleaver, and you can tell he's going to be chopping up one of these people and eating them for food. The man talking right now with the beard is he played the role of Benno in Mad Max, who was the quasi-retarded man that Max kind of and his family befriend there on their vacation trip. So besides Mel Gibson, he's the only character to actually appear in both Mad Max and Road Warrior.
And he's the same character in both.
He's not the same character, no. It's just the same actor, right? I must have been a friend of George Miller's. So we have our gang pulling up here. Wes noticing inching to the front, and I love the fact that Max and Wes have spotted each other. Even with all these crowds around, they've both immediately cued in on each other. And again, that showdown from the Mundi road is going to continue here. That hatred. Our only American member of the gang, the Toady, who's like the least respected member of the gang, and he's, of course, the only American actor, Todd Phipps. The Ayatollah of Rock and Rolla, which obviously Chris Jericho of the WWE took that line. He has a lot of love for the Road Warrior, and he took that as one of his nicknames for his character during his wrestling career.
Yes, the Ayatollah of Rock and Roll, Bane Humongous, and here he is talking about how he is Gotham's Reckoning.
That's a good callback. I would not have immediately thought of that. As a child, I was fascinated with the look of the Humongous, the metal hockey mask, the burned head, the huge neck brace, and he's just he really draws you to that. It's a unique look for that character.
This scene, the way everybody looks on both sides, the way every single character looks, it immediately makes me think that if 1986 Jim Crockett era NWA made a movie, it would be this movie.
I agree. Well, obviously, your Road Warriors. The rabbit that Wes just shot with his crossbow, that was not a real rabbit. It was George Miller is an animal lover, and he would never hurt an animal for a movie. Now we're going to get the showdown here with the Feral Kid and Wes with the boomerang that George Miller threw in as kind of a joke, since everyone always views Australia and the boomerang. Shocking moment there. Brutal moment. This was a scene that had to be edited down a little bit as Wes pulling the boomerang from the Golden Youth's head. And this is a nice touch here in the sense that Wes had genuine affection for that Golden Youth. And, in another movie, in the hands of another writer, you would not get that. But he genuinely loved that blonde-haired boy that he had with him on his bike. And there goes Toadie's fingers, which as a child, that scared me, to lose your fingers in such a horrific manner, only to be cajoled then by all of the gang members who just think it's made their day to watch him lose his hand.
Yeah, he's like...
The Humongous himself is played by Kjell Nilsson, who's a Swedish weightlifter. His voice, though, was dubbed over many times, even in different English versions of the movie. If you go on YouTube, you can see clips with some of the different voice actors who dubbed him over, and obviously for American audiences they deepened his voice, they synth him up a little bit, because it is jarring sometimes to hear the original voice coming out of the Humongous, because it's not quite as deep and menacing as the version that we have gotten. In a 1985 interview, George Miller discussed his theories on the Humongous character, and he kind of said that in his mind, the Humongous was a former military officer, and based on his grammar and his methods and his weapon of choice, that holds up very well. And Miller assumed that the Humongous suffered some of his severe facial and cranial burns, probably in the collapse of society where the military would have been involved. And then he's obviously taken his military skills out into the wasteland, and he's done a good enough job as a leader to band together this riffraff who clearly respect him and are going to follow his orders.
That was a nice shot to show the intensity of how hard he was choking. Who's our red motor?
Wes.
How hard he was choking by the way the veins were bulging out in the back of his head.
Yeah, and again, it shows that there's going to be another scene later that's going to again show that power play, again, that hierarchy, which a lot of times you would miss, but there's the hierarchy here that Wes is the respected right-hand man of the Humongous, but when push comes to shove, the Humongous is in charge, and he does a couple times here have to power his way into that authority position over his right-hand man. Again, our movie playing out like a chess match here with our two kings, Humongous and Papagawa, Wes and Max kind of being almost the queens of the chessboard, who are going to be the most powerful pieces of both of the two armies. They're the ones who are going to basically handle all the action elements and keep the story propelling along. Wes and Max are also both now emotionally void. They've got nothing more to focus on than each other. Max has already lost his wife and his family in the previous film, so he doesn't have a lot going on, but he understands there's that hatred coming at him from Wes. Wes, now having lost the golden youth again, he's focusing on Max. Max is the cause. This guy hadn't been here, maybe I'm not in this situation at this point in time, and maybe my loved one is also still alive.
Do you find it weird that these people would just let this kid live out there in the elements and not take him in?
I think that there's the feral kid is what he's referred to, and I get the idea that even if they were trying to kind of bring him in, it's just not going to work.
He's not having it.
He's not having any of it. No way. The feral kid is really the only character in the movie that Max kind of eventually shows some genuine affection for. I love the scene here that Max just takes the handcuffs off and he just kind of kicks back and relaxes as he's going to watch the interplay of the compound go through its course here to see who he's dealing with. And you're gonna get the two factions here. You're gonna get Big Rebecca, who's the one who's basically saying we need to trust the Humongous, we need to leave the compound and walk away. And then you're going to have Papagawa, who's going to say, look, if we walk out there, we're dead. We'll never get across the wasteland to the ocean to safety if we don't have the gasoline. We need to have the gasoline. Here we get the connecting scene between Max and the feral kid, where the feral kid is going to show the boomerang. And like, here's what I've done today. I've killed somebody. What have you done? As he's staring him down. And Max, of course, is going to look and go, this is a child, and I've got my music box. This is a great callback to what his earlier discovery in the movie. So he's going to pull out his music box, and again, you get that connecting moment of, well, he's wild, he's unkempt, he doesn't speak, but music is going to be a connector here between him and Max, and that's going to play out later because the feral kid will save Max's life at least one time, if not two. When the feral kid opens his mouth, though, on the close-up, you can see some fillings in his mouth, so clearly the wasteland has a good dental program.
He does his own dental work on himself. It's probably just metal stuck in his teeth from one time he had to chew through a chain or something.
Could be.
It's a good thing that he found a music box that plays a sweet lullaby song and not one that came from a Pop Goes the Weasel, or Jack in the Box.
German death metal band or something that would terrify the feral kid and scare him. again, just like the Humongous gang, it's such distinctive looks. We have such distinctive looks here in the compound of all these characters because, again, dialogue's not going to get these characters across. So a lot of times the only thing we can bond with is our visual. What are we looking at visually? Like the old curmudgeon who kind of has his military gear, even though he's clearly has never been in the military. He's just some old loon. You have some of the people who are going to stay and be willing to fight, who are wearing the football pads and the armor, and then you have some of the people who are just exhausted and they've had enough.
Yes, he's the archetypical crazy guy who's still wearing his helmet with medals pinned to him, walking around like he's, claiming that he's George Patton.
Absolutely. One of Mel's big lines that Newsbomb and I, as children, used to quote all the time with our versions of a heavy Australian accent. Only 16 lines of dialogue in the movie. And when you watch the movie, you don't immediately jump on that fact that he has so few lines to really say in the film. But
what's the one line he says twice? I'm just here for the gasoline.
I'm just here for the gasoline. I don't know if they counted that twice or if they counted it individually here. So now we're going to get the official exchange here between Max and the group as far as the deal that they're going to make. Max's outfit is obviously something that gets copied a lot by post-apocalyptic movies too, and there's a reason for his outfit that a lot of people miss out on. So he is missing a right sleeve to his leather jacket, and that's because in the original Mad Max he was run over. His right arm was run over by motorcycles, probably broken, and in order to get some medical needs care of his arm, he had to cut off that sleeve to take care of it. He wears the leg brace on one of his legs because in the original Mad Max he was shot in the knee by the Road, the motorcycle gang, and you're going to see he's going to get the leg brace greased here so the squeaking doesn't give him away in his night journey. He's got I like that they wrapped his boots in cloth so he's going to be able to quietly traverse through the desert here. He's got his tools in case he's got to work on the truck, car, etc. One of the, if you're going to look for some scientific accuracy, he asks for some diesel gas and for some high-octane gasoline, and he's carrying all of this on a big metal bar over his shoulders. And I did the math, and he's basically, if this was real, he would be carrying 160 pounds of fuel on his bag. So probably, my guess is that Mel's carrying some empty gas buckets here.
Yeah, that would be a pretty good squat, 160 pounds.
One of the scenes that's really hard to see in a pan and scan version in this moment here, where Max is trying to get by one of the Humongous's encampments, and he steps into a hole. And on a pan and scan, it's kind of tricky to see this. The widescreen, we're going to see this a little bit better, that we're going to get the three key players, which is Max and his dog are down in the hole. The Mohawk man is walking basically to the edge of the pit where he knows it is. He's looking around, and then the feral kid has arrived on the other end of the trench to distract him with some dingo noises, some coyote noises. So the guy basically is like, it's just that stupid kid screwing around with us again. But on the letterbox version, right there in a shot like that, we get it very clearly, and on a pan and scan, it's much trickier to tell what's going on, especially since it is so dark on top of it.
Do you ever wonder why in the future everybody's a punk rocker? In the 80s, in the future, everybody is a punk rocker.
There was apparently a lot of secondhand thrift stores and sporting goods shops and S&M shots that were raided for the wardrobe of the movie by the costume designer.
Suddenly they were all out of shoulder pads all over Australia.
It's George Miller refers to Max as a broken man. At the start of this movie, he's a broken man who's turned his back completely on society. And he's basically at the end of Mad Max, he was in the most pessimistic of situations that you can find yourself in. Is he redeemable? Is it possible for Mad Max to regain his humanity? And I think we just kind of saw that first step there, which is he's dead. That gang's going to find him in that hole if the feral kid does not show up and make that noise to distract them, because otherwise they're going to start looking like, what could have made this noise out here? Love the shot there. Again, another visual, nice dawn visual by Dean Sempler of the compound in the background as Max comes up to his old campsite. He's looking clearly for the gyro captain who has managed in his own way to free himself from the chains that Max has left him in.
That's right. The gyro captain never goes inside the compound. They don't know he exists.
Not yet. Not yet. They do not.
At this point in the story.
We get the shot here of the gyro captain dragging himself across the wasteland. A lot of people always forget, too, when they refer to, especially these early films, that people always assume that Mel Gibson is Australian, and in fact, he's not. He was born in New York, Peekskill, New York, 1956. He did not move to Australia until he was 12, so he's, again, not an Australian actor. He's an American.
Well, good. He can still run for president. Do you get nervous whenever you see a dog in a movie, like a beloved dog in a movie, because we know what happens to almost every well-liked dog in a movie? Whenever there's a hero and his dog,
people, and it's just clever storytelling. And George Miller talks about that in an interview, that he gets more grief from viewers of this movie because of what happens to the dog. And again, the dog, no character name. He's just simply dog. He's just there, and yet people bond. Considering all the human life that is tragically killed in this movie, when the dog finally dies, people just go nuts. This is great, obviously, the payback of not everybody's quick enough to get that snake, as this guy clearly only made it so many steps before the snake's venom did him in. The art direction of this movie is outstanding. Graham Walker, who goes by the nickname of Grace, currently working on AMC's The Walking Dead TV show. And you can kind of see how a lot of this early work here in films like The Road Warrior certainly paved the way for what he's going to do later on with the show like The Walking Dead. We're in another post-apocalyptic setting. This is one of my favorite moments too. Again, you got to watch it. But I've got a shell. I have a shotgun shell that looks like it's going to be good, and now I'm going to put it in my empty gun. It's such a great reveal where the gyro captain realizes he's been duped the entire time.
Empty gun the whole time.
Yeah. But I mean, again, if you go back to that original showdown between Max and Wes, it shows you how strong Max is, that he's going to stand there with an empty gun and hopefully get the job done. So we're going to get obviously the high octane gas is going to help the gyro captain's gyro fly. The gyro itself, designed by the French military in 1921, does not fly like a helicopter. It actually needs a runway to take off and land from, even though they're going to treat it like a helicopter. A dummy here. The gyro captain's vehicle could only hold one person, so you got the pilot, and then next to him on his left is just a dummy sitting in for Mel. And again, how they got that 160 pounds of gasoline on there as well, I'm not quite sure.
So I paid a lot of attention to the shots with the gyrocopter in this movie, because that is the kind of vehicle that could ruin every shot that it's in if it's done the wrong way. This is a fabulous display of filmmaking here, the way George Miller treats this flying vehicle, because almost all the shots are either really, really close up, and they're cut in a way to where they don't feel like they're insert edits, at which they are, and there's a couple toward the end where the copter is flying right along with the fleet of trucks, and I don't know how they pulled that off. And again, a movie where you don't have that CGI option, it's impressive. It could look so cheap. It could look like it's swinging from wires. It could look like a miniature. I don't know how they did it.
Yep. I love the fact, too, that Max, again, has a little bit of affection here. Like the gyro captain has done everything he's needed, so he tosses him the handcuff key finally and kind of gives him the do what you want. He's given him fuel for his gyro, so the guy's free to go where he wants. But the gyro captain's going to show some loyalty here, and he's going to kind of follow along still with Max and, in fact, help when he can. So Max, again, is getting this assistance when he needs it. He needed it from the dog at one point. He needed it from the feral kid. He needs it from the gyro captain. So even though Max isn't necessarily showing a lot of affinity for these people, they're looking out for him. Great moment there where he stops the truck and he looks at his shotgun and he's like, okay, I got my truck and I've got one shell. Now I've got to get through this barricade of this gang, and I've already seen what they've done when people are trying to escape. Now I've got to run this gauntlet and get into the compound. Wes has got nothing better to do right now than just get his mohawk trimmed up.
Yes, he's
very intimidating. Everything I've read about Vernon Wells is that he's about the nicest guy you could come across. He's been at the Motor City Comic Con before, and people have said he was very friendly and amicable, kind of walking out and saying hi to people. But as a child, he terrified me. I mean, I would not want to ever run across Wes. There we get the leather police officer, kind of evil cop kind of guy, and there's about 5 or 6 of them in the gang. They're obviously all different people, but it shows you that the Humongous kind of incorporated another gang into his much bigger army.
When you first saw this as a kid, were you aware that these were? See, there's a shot of the gyro.
Yes.
It feels like it's part of the larger picture, but it's not. But because of the skillful editing and craftsmanship of this film, you still feel like it's there. As a kid watching this, were you aware that a lot of this stuff was? A lot of the wardrobe came from bondage shops. Did you know what that meant?
No, it all that stuff just kind of got away from me. I guess I never really paid attention to the fact that like Wes's ass is hanging out of the chaps and things like that. It wasn't until much later in life, it might have even been college, before I even really picked up on the fact of the Golden Youth with his neck chained to the bike. This stuff meant nothing to me.
No, it's weird how we just accepted things.
Yes.
Like that's just how they dressed.
Well, you know what?
Before we became cynics.
And I was a fan of a good action film. So we're going to get the shot here of the Humongous. We're going to get another little hint at his background, which is when he takes out his pistol. He's got his pistol in a case. Again, respect for the weapon. There's a picture there of a Nazi officer in the top with the Totenkopf death's head, which was infamous for its connection to the SS. So again, we're assuming he was either a former military officer or somehow connected to what had taken place there in Germany, maybe his ancestors, and a weapon had been passed on. Max's gun has the misfire, and we know the Humongous is going to hit. He's got the scope. Max ducks, so the Humongous then changes his target. He was going for Max. He then shoots out the radiator, and he gets it on he only used one bullet, and he got it. Favorite moment of mine as a child. Obviously, the tent lovers,
who are completely surprised that all of this is going on. Shots are fired. Vehicles are racing around them.
Their tent is removed. Again, finally, you're going to get... All right, Wes has finally gotten his hands on Max. I just love... As a child, this scene scared me. I really did not know if Max was going to successfully get into the compound. I thought he might have a bigger problem on his hands. The fact that he's driving, he's fighting off vehicles, he's fighting off Wes as this is taking place. Gordy always had a great line as... When we were teens, Gordy and I would watch this, it seemed like every weekend, and he always said that he would rather die a horrible death than survive and be captured by the Humongous's gang because of just how horrible it looked to be one of their prisoners and the things that they were going to probably end up doing to you.
They are completely savage.
Obviously, we have a little joke here. The pink car, the pink guy. So obviously probably another one of our bottoms of the Humongous's gang.
And he goes up in flames.
That's right. New York Times movie critic Vincent Canby at the time said that never has a film's vision of the post-nuclear Holocaust world seemed quite as desolate and as brutal or as action-packed as the world that The Road Warrior shows us. And I love that they're running on foot now to the gate. Like, just get that bus out of the way, and we're going to storm this compound. Great flip here by the stuntman. Obviously, that was not Vernon Wells. And then there goes the quiet man with the vicious headbutt. Again, the gang storming the gates as Papagawa is kind of holding them back. Here's another spot where they did a Blu-ray cleanup. When Papagawa gets shot with the arrow on older versions, you're going to see the wire clearly holding the arrow in his leg, and it's a reverse shot. And here on the Blu-ray, they've blurred that out, so it's not visible anymore. again, I like the fact that Wes is running around this compound. He's the only one that they can't get a hold of. All the other guys have been killed. And is Wes looking for an escape? No, he's actually kind of going in a roundabout way. He's still trying to work his way back to Max if he can. So there's two different things going on here. Max is running for the gate. I'm going to try and defend this compound simply because I want to fuel up my vehicle and get the hell out of here. But Wes now has worked his way back to Max, and he's going to load up his crossbow and basically go for a killing shot here. I got to get his line of dialogue in first.
They're still wasting a lot more gas here with this giant flamethrower.
Feral Kid again coming to the rescue, and then just in case Wes is going to change his mind, here comes the gyro captain. And
yes, and we know it from the point of view shot first.
It's a great shot. That's not how a gyro in real life would land, but Wes has now officially had enough. He's seen too much in one day. He's not happy about it, but he's going to retreat. The Humongous' gang is already, obviously, they're driving off as well. So we have all of our players in place here with the gyro captain arriving, and you get the shot of the compound is welcoming Max. Max has done what he has promised to do. He's delivered a tanker. They've got a means for escape. And again, this is humanity. This is the last vestiges of humanity. Max, we welcome you in. We're going to shake your hand. We're going to thank you. We're going to give you a couple of shotgun shells as a gift. And then Max is going to have none of it. And he's going to basically say, look, I was just doing this for the gas. I could care less about you people. I want my fuel. I want my car. I want to get out of here.
The gyro captain taking a liking.
Arky Whiteley is the blonde-haired girl right there, and who obviously, as we learn later in the movie, does kind of become the gyro captain's girl and stuff like that. This is a fun little exchange. This is one that Gordy and I used to always laugh at as kids, which is kind of nice in a bleak movie like this, where they're shouting across the camp back and forth, how's the rig? Give us a status update on the rig. And you've got Zeppa, the mechanic, running down. It's got a fracked radiator hose, timing gears off, and then you have this other guy in a thicker Australian accent repeating it as he's shouting it over. It's very much a Scotty Captain Kirk homage here of I'm going to tell you the problem, and I'm going to say I need 24 hours, and when Papagawa goes, I'm going to give you 12. We can get it done in 12.
Okay.
Zeppa, the mechanic there, is quadriplegic in the film. He's obviously been hurt in some fashion, so he's always in the sling. His legs do not work, but he's their lead mechanic, and he's going to be brave enough later to go on the tanker, even though he does not have working legs. The warrior woman, Virginia Hay, kind of, you almost think like she's got an affection for Max here, but he's having none of it. Like, she says, I'm sorry, I misjudged you, and he's out of there. He distances himself immediately from the character. And as a kid watching this for the first time, you always have that feeling of like, well, the male character must bond with the most attractive woman in the movie, but it's weird that Max is just not going to do that.
He's very much the heroic drifter, as you said at the beginning. It's like the Clint Eastwood Man with No Name, and it would make sense that Hollywood would approach George Miller to have him do Rambo, because he's very Rambo-ish in that way too.
Mm-hmm. So Max is basically saying, I'm out of here. Forget it. The feral kid, though, when Max is walking through, runs right up and kind of walks alongside Max. Mel Gibson and Emil Minty, who plays the feral kid, they bonded during the course of the movie. Mel Gibson was actually the one who taught Emil Minty how to throw a boomerang. And apparently, according to people on set, he also taught Emil Minty how to headbutt people in real life without causing injury to yourself. So,
I thought you were going to say he taught him how to smoke cigarettes. For some reason, I thought that was going to come up.
Mel Gibson's famous for, in his younger years, of being in a lot of bar brawls and things like that. So apparently he was passing that knowledge on to the kid. Like, if you have to headbutt somebody, here's how you do it. Very frightening moment here where the Humongous is basically laying down his gauntlet. Broken Hill, chosen because it had not rained in 4 years before filming of this movie, and then it rained for a week solid, and they still decided to shoot some scenes here even though it was raining, just to incorporate it into the movie. Like, yeah, the joke is 4 years no rain, we're here for 12 weeks, and we get 7 days of pretty heavy rain that they couldn't shoot as much in.
On a low budget production.
Low budget. And again, the Humonguses, the Dogs of War and Marauders here stringing up those survivors. And again, they're in the background, they're screaming, they're strung up. They were setting the one guy on fire. You know, they're probably cutting, dismembering, doing God knows what to those people. And you just feel for them like, death, please give me the sweet release of death and get me out of the hands of this gang.
Yeah, they're being crucified by an S&M gang in the middle of the desert.
Yeah. You can see they're building all the fortifications now for the semi. We're going to get what we need to for our final run here of the gauntlet. There's the car that Papagawa will eventually ride off in as he does the final battle sequence. As they're going through this scene here, obviously Max is off by himself. He's fueling up his V8 Interceptor, and he's getting ready to make his break. And the Feral Kid and Papagawa are going to both show up. Papagawa is going to show up and basically say, listen, we need you. We want you to be part of the family. The Feral Kid's going to show up and want to tag along. And Max is just not having any of it. He's completely avoid of any form of emotional connection to these characters. It's not there. And going back to George Miller's original, is he redeemable? Can Max ever return to society and genuinely feel any form of emotion? Just like here, the gyro captain's glad he's got a squeeze. She seems to be into him. She wants to sneak off with him, but she has this emotional tie to the compound of, look, this is my family. I will not leave these people. And he has an affinity for her, so he decides then he's going to stay around. Like, if this means this much to her, I will stay too.
Was that her husband who died at the beginning?
I don't think so.
Was it kind of implied that was her man at the beginning?
No. The man that Max brings, Nathan, you almost get the idea that it might have been Big Rebecca's, maybe her significant other, maybe like some form of a relative, because she seemed to show the most emotion for his death. She was there when they were trying to revive him and stuff. So and that's why she was so angry about just giving up and getting out of there. Just that Ford Falcon and how they've, again, the tires, all the boxes of things that have been scavenged, jammed into it, the twin gas tanks on the back. It's just such an iconic vehicle. You're going to see in Fury Road that Tom Hardy is Mad Max. His car rolls over and it looks like it's seemingly destroyed in one of the previews. But then in a longer preview, they're going to show Max running around in the evil gang's lair, and you can see all the albinos basically doing a repair job on the Interceptor. And certainly in a few of the action sequences for Fury Road, you can see that the Interceptor is there playing as a vehicle for the bad guy gang. So it looks like they're going to explain how the vehicle could be seemingly wrecked, repaired, and accessible to Max by the end of that movie. I love he's got the red lines on his neck from when Wes was basically grabbing a hold of him there in the battle. He's got that little his first of many injuries to come here.
Attention to detail in this movie is phenomenal. From the costuming that you were talking about earlier, how it's consistent with the first film. Do these things carry over, like, say, the reason he's missing his sleeve and his limp? Do these things carry over to Beyond Thunderdome?
To an extent, they do. One of the things that I had a big issue with in Thunderdome is he loses the leg brace. His leg is bandaged up, but he loses the actual brace. On the unofficial timeline here, they say that between Mad Max and Road Warrior, about 5 years have passed in that world. In real world, it was 2 years. Mel Gibson is only 24 right here for this movie. Then they say from the Road Warrior to Beyond Thunderdome, it's more of a 10 to 15 year gap as society has really disappeared. So who knows if in that amount of time his leg had healed more where he didn't need the actual brace anymore or not. But the look of his uniform is essentially pretty much still there. He has his hair cut in a similar fashion that they'll explain. He still has his affinity for the sawed-off shotgun. It's there enough. And it looks like it's certainly from the previews for Fury Road, it looks like it's carried over. There's just you're not going to bond with Mad Max because of the things he says. It's his look. And again, on Fury Road, it looks like that look that Tom Hardy has is still pretty much this iconic look. Again, the great shot, which is going to be our payoff, he's hooking up his bomb. So even though I'm going to make a break for it, it's important for me to get my vehicle in working order. I'm hooking my bomb up to my full gas tanks because who knows who may try and rob me.
And here comes the feral kid.
The feral kid has showed up. He's playing the music, and this is a tough moment for Max, where he's gonna have to very rudely send this kid off. George Miller made the comment about Max refuses to let the feral kid come with him to avoid any form of emotional connection, but he feels like it's also because he knows that having a child with him is going to compromise his own chances for any form of survival in the wasteland. And it's really, at this point still, it's all about himself. I need to be able to survive out there. You know, if I die, the dog's on its own, but I'm not taking this kid with me. This kid may hamper me.
And the kid would be a complete distraction.
Absolutely.
In this situation, you can't have him go, and you can't compromise his safety.
It's nice,
Max is willing to die.
He is,
but just because he's willing to die doesn't mean he can bring someone else in that.
He's not willing to commit suicide. He's not willing to kill himself. So he's just kind of drifting. He's just drifting through his life. But you're right. If he dies, he dies. I love the fact, again, that while he's doing his thing, if you look at it's that background, there's always this things, even at this point in the movie where the plot has slowed down and we're waiting for the climax, things in the compound have not slowed down at all. There's everyone's in the background doing what they need to do to get the vehicles, the rig, and everything ready. Papagawa's sitting there. He's kind of got almost that Napoleon kind of jacket over the shoulders. He's thinking about the battle to come, and you get that look on his face that's going to pay off later where he thinks they don't have a chance. You can see it in his face where he thinks if they had Max, they would have had a better chance of beating the Humongous' gang, and as Max leaves, so do the best odds of them surviving.
He's playing with an hourglass. He's contemplating time that has passed, time that we have left remaining on this earth, all the different things that come with when you think about time, when you consider time.
And again, Max gives him the good luck, and he's out of there. But I think even he knows they probably don't have a good shot. He's got his plan though, and his plan is I'm going to hit the highway and I'm going to get out of here as quickly as possible. We're coming up to the weakest shot of the movie here. It's the only moment in the movie where they really had to resort to a rapid frame rate for the cameras. And in listening to the audio commentary, George Miller and Dean Sempor kind of comment that they couldn't get the vehicles on this dirt to go at a rapid enough speed, so they had to speed up the camera. It was the only. Otherwise, the vehicles chasing Max here, it would have felt like they were going in slow motion, so they had to resort to a little speeding up of the camera.
Yeah, and that scene looked very kind of Benny Hill.
Very much so, and they acknowledged it, but there was like that was our only option. So Max is like, I'm out of here. I'm going to activate my turbocharger, my blower. I'm going to hit the road. It's already daytime, so clearly this chase has gone on for a while. But here's the secret weapon. The Humongous, just like the best Fast and the Furious movies, has NOS.
He has a nitrous oxide tank, and he just punched it.
And it's going to go faster than Max's turbocharger, and Wes is going to finally get him here. I didn't cry, Don. I certainly had some tears welling up in my eyes, first for the loss of this awesome vehicle, but secondly because I thought this was it for Max. I just didn't know what this movie was going to deliver, but I did not expect to see Max get taken out by Wes at this point in the movie. Again, the Humongous' car with those poor bastards still strapped to the front of it. Though I can imagine living out the last several days of your life as a hood ornament for this man's vehicle. That is the war, and they're still alive. Those guys have not been killed yet. So we have Max slinking out of his car.
Max and the dog. The dog is fine.
Dog made it.
But Max is in pretty rough shape.
Yeah, he's not going to have much of a chance here, clearly. Again, another one of our evil leather motorcycle cop guys, and then one-handed toady. They're coming down with their gas canisters again, the only commodity is fuel. But this guy's thinking, where's Max? I'm going to go find him. And I love the fact that, again, Wes doesn't have the authority of the Humongous, where Wes tells them, if he's alive, I want him, and this guy doesn't give a shit. He's going to kill he sees Max, and he's going to go in for the kill here. Max has no shot, can't even hold his gun up, so then our dog is going to come into play. And just like a Tarantino film, I love the fact that the death's going to take place off camera. We're going to get the sound effect. The dog is dead. It's funny sometimes what people think that they see, and we never even get a dead body of the dog with the arrow in it. We just hear the yelp.
Yeah, it's just as bad. He's dropped the gun.
Great payoff here, though.
Here comes the fuse is burning down.
We were introduced to that bomb early with the gyro captain, and then we get our official payoff where the toady and this black leather cop get taken out. And Wes has now got a little bit of a problem. He's been doubly robbed because he's been robbed of the chance to kill Max, to get that dead body as proof of I've finished him, and he's also going to have to return to camp knowing that not only did I disobey the Humongous and steal the Humongous's car, but I'm not even coming back with gas or any prizes to give to him as any form of a tribute, so to speak. So he's going to pay that price. Again, the film being shot chronological order, they had two different V8 Interceptor Ford Falcons, so one of them was destroyed. For years, I guess, apparently out in that area, the Broken Hill, they just didn't care, so a lot of the wreckage was left from this movie. Both the car and the semis we'll see later, and people would drive out to these areas of Broken Hill and have their photos taken by the wrecks, and eventually somebody just showed up with a flatbed and stole them. Took both of all the different wrecked vehicles because they're gone now, but they were there for quite a long time. Again, nice camera trick here to let us know. It's the slow motion, semi-blurred crawl to let us know that he's clearly got a concussion. He's not of his right mind.
Yeah, he's rattled.
Where's he crawling to? Is he going to try and crawl back to the compound? Is he just crawling like, this is all I know how to do is to drift from one place to another? We're not clear on this, but he's going to eventually roll over here. And again, our gyro captain coming to the rescue. This guy who Max has really not done a lot for, but he's there. He's going to be the loyal sidekick and show up and save Max's life here. Max has no shot of making it without getting back to the compound.
And with this camera effect, we don't know if he really sees him at first or if it's a mirage. But now here we see kind of a MASH unit shot.
George Miller and Dean Sumpler in their commentary comment that apparently it was raining when they filmed this shot. Mel is just hanging out of a helicopter for that portion of the shot, and they said it was raining. It was freezing cold. The rain was actually hitting him, and he did a good job of just kind of leaning with his head out so they could get all this shot here. And again, we see as the gyro captain's flying Max back. Get a nice visual here of the compound, the aerial, because this is a real helicopter, so it's going to set down in the compound. But again, there's our tire wall, our compound. So Max is back at the semi, kind of right there. They're revealing everything in the background. So here's what's going to be taking place. Apparently, in interviews, they asked Mel Gibson if having his eye basically with the makeup swollen shut for the movie, for the final portions of the movie, if that was a problem for him. And he said the worst part about making the movie was the fake blood that he had to wear on his face and neck and stuff, because it was, it's just corn syrup and stuff, and I guess it was really sticky. And to show some sympathy, George Miller put some fake blood on himself to be like, well, if you're uncomfortable and miserable, I'll be uncomfortable and miserable. And George Miller said, and it truly was uncomfortable to wear all that corn syrup on your face.
Oh, like when that guy who did the Lindsay Lohan movie got naked, so she would get naked in that.
That's right, exactly. And then again, Max has shunned the feral kid, and who's the first one to show up here with his clothes and his weapons? It's the feral kid. Like, I'm here for you. Max redeemable? Still not so much. He's looking at this kid here, but he's not won over. And again, so we have Papagawa pumping up the troops, telling you we're gonna get out of here. We're gonna break through this gauntlet. We're gonna get to safety. If everyone does what you're supposed to do with our plan, you're gonna make it. Even though we're pretty much tipped off that he doesn't think they're gonna make it. And how do we know this? Because the minute Max says, "I'll drive the truck," he hands it over to Max immediately. So wounded man with broken ribs and one eye and an injured arm and leg who can barely walk, Papagawa knows they still have a better chance of surviving with him than without him.
This is a famous shot from this movie. That shot of Max limping up with his eye swollen shut.
And hand on the feral kid's head like he's
Yep.
using the feral kid more as just a crutch to help him out. And so he's going to explain, all right, I'm the best chance you've got. At first, they're not going to really go for it, but then they just know he's correct. He is 100% the only chance that they're going to have in survival. It's a nice argument that my friends and I have had over the years, which is, so is Max truly concerned with helping out here? Or is he concerned with, well, if I get a semi-truck full of gas, I can certainly drift a lot longer from destination A to B and not worry about running out of gas? His motivation is still a little bit unclear here. I like to think that he lost his dog, he lost his vehicle, so he lost his way of life. So he's kind of right now, he's in it more of, I want to just destroy this gang. That's how I've always kind of viewed this moment, is like, now I've got some shotgun shells too. I'm in it to bring this gang down and just wipe them out.
Well, if he doesn't help, then he's lost all those things for nothing. At least make those sacrifices count in your life.
And we're still, we'll talk about it when we get to that scene here. We'll still talk about it because Papagawa is going to give him the nod, and he just gives him that like really abrupt, like, yeah, whatever. I'm not 100% sure we've got that moment of humanity here, but I'll tell you, anyone who wants to climb on this semi truck and get out there in this battle against this gang, you got balls the size of Alpha Centauri, because if I'm in this world, I'm in the school bus with the old people crying and hoping I'm going to make it.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to be facing this gang. Again, here we are, our symbolism. Wes has defied the humongous, so he's got his neck collar and he's chained up. Again, showing I am in charge.
Yeah, and now he's the guy in chains.
He's he's certainly the bottom for the humongous, whether sexually or not. He's the power exchange has been made very clear. I remember the first time seeing this, my father groaning that the feral kid was actively trying to get on the truck. And I love the fact that this is one of those movies that they incorporate a child into the movie in as little of annoying fashion as possible. He's really a fun character to kind of have along for the ride. The humongous knows this is it. It's now or never. He's loaded up every bullet he's got left in his gun. And
so that would have been his father's or grandfather's gun. You saw the picture that was on the underside lid of the case.
We're going to use that. We're using it all here. We're getting the tanker or nothing. And again, I think a little bit short-sighted, because if you think about it, if you let these people leave, you would still have the compound, which is going to pump gas, but they want that tanker. The gyro captain getting involved in the thing here. And the first time I saw this movie, I had no clue what I was in store for, but essentially what we're going to get is a 13-minute action finale, all practical effects before special effects really came into play. I had no clue. I mean, the end of Mad Max is a 10-minute sequence, and it feels fairly quick. Here we get a 13-minute sequence that is just outstanding. At this point in cinema, 1981, nobody had seen anything quite like what this movie is going to deliver.
So here we have the trucks rumbling across the desert, and there's the gyro flying above them in a shot that defies 1981 filmmaking, for sure. I don't know how they got that thing in the air to fly.
It's incredible, and you're going to see.
It has to be some kind of remote control.
There are so many,
because it's not a process shot.
Yeah, there
has
are
not been added in.
So many moving vehicles that are all in the correct positions at the correct time. It's really great. So now, obviously, we're getting the explosion, the compound explosion, which happened on July 22nd, 1981. The explosion was so big that they were required by law to notify all airports and all mines within the vicinity because of how massive the explosion was. At the time, for Australian cinema, this was the largest explosion and the largest amount of explosive materials that had ever been used for one shot. And they got it on one shot with 5 separate cameras.
That's a big risk. It has to be done in one shot. You can't redo this, and you have to rebuild all your set and everything. And
no money.
Yeah, there's no money for that.
And again, another reason for
there's
that.
No money, there's no time.
For that chronological shooting, you can see the burned in the middle there. There was that burned car of the pink member of the Humongous gang. I love this wipe here. I love that wipe. And then now we're on. We got nothing left to remain except the showdown. Humongous's Marauders versus Max in the semi. We're going to get a little minor, as minor as possible assistance from a couple of our compound fighters, but it's one man against a gang. And that's, as a fan of superhero comic books and genre as a kid, this was the stuff I loved, where it was one against many. That really appealed to me as a child, like one person against many different opponents. And this certainly won me over big time. The Humongous, just like Papagawa knew their chances were limited, the Humongous knows that Wes is his best soldier. He needs to be in the fight. So I love the fact that he breaks that chain and he sets him, he's like turning him loose, like go do what you need to do. And this is what Wes excels at for sure. There's those two bastards still mounted on the front of the car. The side of the tanker truck, which I hadn't really talked about, says Seven Sisters Petroleum, and it was a little joke by George Miller referencing at the time the world's oil controllers, Shell, ExxonMobil, Chevron, Texaco, Gulf, and BP.
7 companies.
Yeah. And then we have again, all these vehicles move in foreground, background. Here we're going to get one little flub here that they never cleaned up all the way, which is you're going to see the real driver of the tanker truck here. You're going to see him right next to Mel, and right there. There's his head.
Oh yeah, saw it.
Yeah, he's tucked down there.
Never would have seen it had you not.
He's the one driving the tanker truck while Mel's doing all of the acting here. As a teen watching this, absolutely horrific. When these people of the compound each get dispatched, it's just so brutal. This guy here on the back end of the truck, getting pulled over. First of all, being used as an anchor for the grappling hook, and then eventually being pulled over and killed. Real stakes.
Yeah.
George Miller has said that he was a fan of the Buster Keaton movie The General from 1926, which apparently had a very long, prolonged action sequence that was very frenetic and never stopping. And so when it came time to shoot this scene of the Road Warrior, that's what he was basing it on. George Miller has always said that this was the movie he's always wanted to make. He made the original Mad Max partially to set that character into play, but partially because the budget was all that it would allow him. Once he had $4 million for the budget of this movie, he had enough to make the film that he really wanted to make. Even something like Beyond Thunderdome was not on his radar. That came up in a different means, but this is the film that he always said, when I wanted to make a Mad Max film, this is what I envisioned. This tanker truck traveling over the desolate wasteland with the gang chasing him down.
We see this a lot. We see this kind of business model happen a lot with our real auteurs, our real, especially in independent cinema. Robert Rodriguez, Desperado was the movie that he wanted to make, so he had to make El Mariachi first, so to raise the money to make him credible, so people will give him money to make a larger movie and to raise enough funds in case he had to finance it himself.
Robert Rodriguez has also cited The Road Warrior as one of the more influential movies as far as making him want to become a filmmaker. High speed, very dangerous stunt there with that car going off the road, and that's just another great example of stunt work. This really spoke to me too. Again, I mentioned as a young man thinking that the Warrior Woman existed to kind of be Mad Max's female companion, and then this cold-hearted way of her and the mechanic being dispatched, which really brings up, though, our money shot moments. So they're so callously killed. It's brutal. And Max has seen it, and he is going to respond in kind. And I love this shot right here. The payoff with the feral kid, too, but the double-barreled shotgun emptying into both shells, emptying into the driver of the vehicle. You're going to get Guy Norris doing a stunt that ended up breaking his leg several places. He missed the boxes he was supposed to land on because the crash propelled him further than it was supposed to.
That was a crazy flip. Now, it would be very easy for our commentary track here in this last 13-minute scene to just be us going like, oh, ow, ew. Just grunts and expletives and us screaming things, variations on the word wow over and over again.
To be honest with you, what I was more afraid of is that I was going to sit here on the commentary and just watch it. And the commentary would be just us not even speaking, but just in awe of it. I can watch this finale to The Road Warrior. I never get tired of it. This jump here that this guy makes, that's a great scene. Again, everything's moving. If you look at the background here, this vehicle is moving down that road. Things are not being sped up here at this portion as well. A great stunt here, this idiot who tries to shoot the already flattened tire and he gets sucked right under.
Yes, and there's no ugly shots where the camera swoops around the front of the trucks and goes underneath all in one shot and everything, because those are also fake. They completely take you out of the movie.
Yes, we don't get that Peter Jackson 360 panoramic shot to let you know, look what I can do.
Right.
We had that Dean Semler shot there of the gyro up in the air, seeing the battle from above, kind of watching it. That is, I mean, look at, again, the number of vehicles in play here and just going down this desolate highway. So it's just such an iconic action sequence. I know Entertainment Weekly had this as one of their top 5 chase sequences of all cinema, and rightfully so.
So there's a gyro among the vehicles again.
I love the... Again, so frightening, the fact that Max is alone in the truck and now the gang is aboard. These gang members have gotten onto the tanker, and I remember thinking, how is this guy going to drive this truck and dispatch these guys? I love this shot, too, of the feral kid realizing I got to get help here, and Max kind of that shocked, what's this kid doing here? But like the kid looking like, please don't send me away again. I need you. he pulls him in with
one hand.
That's a great shot. And this is also really a stellar moment here where he has to take out 3 guys while still driving the truck.
One shot, of course, through the roof.
Dual shotguns, and then real important here, does not have a chance to reload before the next 2 show up. One of them giving him the claw on the shoulder, and then the other one, Wes, attacking him with the mace. Common sense would tell you to hit the brakes, and Max does just that. And 2 watermelons exploded. The heads of the dummies, 2 watermelons there. But I love the fact that, Max hits the brakes there and sends Wes what we think is to his death, while the feral kid is assisting Max with this guy who's hooked him in the shoulder. At this point, Papagawa is basically think we've given the people of the compound enough time to get away. So he's kind of, I love it. He gives Max that look like, are you ready to call it quits? And Max is having none of it. I think at this point, Max still thinks he's got a tanker full of gas, which obviously we know he does not. And the feral kid's not willing to leave Max either. We have a moment here of some scientific inaccuracy when the Humongous is going to throw his javelin. They're going about 80 miles an hour, so the minute he throws, that wind resistance would pretty much stop it immediately, but he still manages to hit Papagawa. Look at the shape of the vehicle. What arc did that thing have to fall at to get him in the back like that?
Don't dispute the strength of Bane Humongous. He can throw a javelin through the air from a moving vehicle.
There's a key point here that a lot of people are going to miss out on, which is the Humongous is going to get Max here, and again, the gyro captain saves Max. Otherwise, that second javelin is going to kill Max. And we saw it happen with Papagawa, so the gyro captain has saved him. But we're going to get a key point in this chase that a lot of people don't understand on their first viewing, and it's easy to get sucked up in the chase, but the fact that the gyro captain has Molotov cocktail the Humongous's car, so he stops. He's got to stop, and he's got to put out that fire because his NOS is going to explode. Fast and the Furious has taught us that NOS will explode. So the chase continues going down the road, but at a key point, Max is going to do a 180. And that's what a lot of people always miss out on is he's going to spin this truck around and he's going to take them all the way back in the direction that they came. Right here. Now, Wes is not on the front of the truck, so there's an inaccuracy. But he's turned around, and the Humongous does not understand that the chase is actually going to be coming back towards him, and a lot of people miss out, even though our camera work is clearly showing that the truck is turned around. When the gyro captain went down, they had built 2 gyros for the movie, a working one and then one solely for that crash, and they basically just dropped it 10 feet, hit the ground. So it was a non-working model of it. I would not recommend any children climb out on the front of a moving semi, as you're going to be burned pretty severely because that's going to be a real hot hood right there with that motor running underneath it. The Humongous has now used his NOS to try and catch up to the semi because he doesn't understand that it's actually turned around and it's coming right back for him.
And here he goes.
Yes, scared the shit out of me as a teen seeing this movie for the first time. Wes's return. I love the fact, too, here that when everyone's screaming, Max is screaming, the kid's screaming, Wes is screaming, and 65 miles an hour, this was actually shot at in real life. Humongous and Wes are all done. You can see the Humongous's body there fall off the hood of the truck. Now, people have said that when this tanker is stopped on the next cut, you can see Wes's arm still attached to the hood somewhere. I've never seen it. The stunt work, though, that truck really rolled at 65 miles an hour. And the stunt driver was not allowed to eat for 12 hours prior to the scene because they were afraid if he got hurt in the crash, he would have to be rushed into surgery. So here, the wreckage of the tanker. Our big reveal then. No gas in the tanker. Sand. It's just been a decoy the entire time. So the gang has been outsmarted, and there's apparently Josh Brolin's pudgier cousin right there. Wheels still spinning, but the gang has given up. They realize there's no fuel to be found. Maybe we drive back to the compound, but again, they're going to find out that there is no compound anymore. So these last few members of the Marauders, who knows where they end up going? Their leader's gone. Max's shotgun. I always look for that arm, but I never see it. They always say on the internet it's there somewhere.
So they were willing to let their mechanic and our warrior woman die.
I think that...
And everyone else along with Max.
I don't necessarily know if they were willing to. There's that scene where they're arguing, and those characters all demand to go with the rig. Originally, Papagawa was supposed to be driving it, so I think those are the ones who are the most loyal to Papagawa. They were going to stand and fight with him till the end. But yeah, they were going. So this, again, the shocking moment for Max. Obviously, my truck didn't blow up, but on top of that, I'm also not getting any of the fuel. This whole plot has been put into play because I wanted gas, and now all I'm getting is some sand that they've loaded the vehicle with. He did, though, carry the feral kid out with him. So a little bit of compassion there, dragging the kid out. And then we're going to get another one of our little Mona Lisa grins, smiles here as the gyro captain, still alive, is going to pull up. And Max is just kind of going to have his little chuckle like, oh boy, I can't believe it. Here we are again, the three of us. That's about the most we're getting out of Max here. So the feral kid driving off in the school bus with the compound survivors. And I know a lot of people will say, well, how did we get to where we're going to get to? They're going to tip their hand here, and they're going to show you that Max is standing next to the car that Papagawa had been driving during the big chase sequence. So clearly the gyro captain, the feral kid, and Max got in that car. They drove the 100 miles to catch up to the compound survivors. The compound survivors are off to their place in the sun, the feral kid at the very back looking out the window, and then where he's looking at Max, who has chosen to not go. There on the left is that car that Papagawa had. So he's got a vehicle, he's got some gas in it, and he's gonna do what he does, drift through the wasteland. And
the feral kid has been our storyteller. This kid who can't speak at 10 years old ends up having the voice and the diction of Michael Caine.
I'm assuming he follows the well manicured gyro captain's examples on how to lead, because he does say, "I became the leader, the chief of the great northern tribe." So he recounts that story, and that again, it's a sad, bleaker ending in the fact that he's like the road warrior. This is the last I ever saw of him. He exists now only in my memory. There's different versions of the road warrior out there too, where the narration does change, that voiceover does change. There's a couple different English versions where it's different actors speaking it. I know in like the late 80s when NBC showed this, they had a slightly different version of it, and it always threw me off. I'm like, well, that's not the normal voice I'm so used to hearing.
Isn't that annoying when they do that?
Can't stand it. So let's talk a little bit about here. George Miller, just like George Lucas has said that he was influenced a lot when making this film by the movies of Akira Kurosawa, the samurai films.
The samurai films, right.
And again, I've got this book. I've never read it, but everyone always wants to talk about Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces. I've never read the book, but he said that he based a lot of the complexities of Max on that book.
Is it the same Joseph Campbell who from Power of Myth?
Yes.
That guy? Okay, I read Power of Myth.
Empire Magazine lists Mad Max 2: The Road Warrior as in their top 500 greatest movies of all time, all genres. It's in the top 500. The New York Times includes it as one of the 1,000 greatest movies of all time. Entertainment Weekly includes it in their top 100 greatest action movies of all time. Obviously, in 81, the movie ends. We had to wait until 1985 for Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Some different changes took place there. George Miller's partner, Byron Kennedy, died. For Beyond Thunderdome, George Miller only really handled the direction moments that were the action sequences. The battle in Thunderdome and the finale, the big chase scene with the train. The rest of the movie was actually directed by George Ogilvy. So it feels a little bit watered down. Thunderdome itself is kind of funny. George Miller was done with Mad Max. He did the film he wanted to do, which was The Road Warrior. And there was a meeting with some movie studio executives, and somebody had this idea of, I have this idea of like a post-apocalyptic world where like there's a group of children and they need to get taken back to society. I don't know how they get there. And somebody jokingly said, well, maybe Mad Max finds them. And then they called George Miller and gave him that idea. He had a partial idea for this Thunderdome. So they incorporated the two things. And if you see Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, it suffers from a PG rating, but it also feels like two slightly disconnected movies. You have the sequence with Thunderdome. You have the sequence with the children that everyone feels is a little bit weaker, probably rightfully so. So, Don, thoughts here on wrapping up our movie?
This movie is, I was telling you when I was driving out here, it's about a 70-minute drive from my house to your house. And I was listening to Sirius Faction and listening to Marky Ramone's Punk Rock Blitzkrieg, because this is the most punk rock movie ever made. It's totally, and it's so much more punk than the actual movies that were made about bands in the 80s, movies like Tapeheads and Dudes and Dangerously Close, and because it's underground, it's independent of the studio system, it's brutal, it's fast-paced, it does such a good job at doing what it's trying to do. And that's how I rate movies. Like, are you accomplishing what it appears you are trying to accomplish? Most of the time we talk about movies on this show that aren't even close to what they were trying to accomplish because of lack of talent, and really just lack of talent. Because we see here a movie that has a lot of budgetary restrictions, but that doesn't hold them back at all. It's the perfect movie for what it is setting out to be. It is the post-apocalyptic movie.
It
Absolutely.
is. Anything, the look of anything that follows this movie, you can see it's just there. It's all an homage to what George Miller did first. I hold this movie with the highest regard. And I kind of commented to you yesterday. I texted you and said I'm so primed for this podcast. That this is one of those movies that it takes me back to 1981, 82 when I saw this for the first time on cable, and it's, you know, in that time, very few action films have held up as well as this movie does. And again, you watch this and if you showed this to somebody, I don't think somebody would go, oh, this movie looks like it's from the 80s. It looks so cheesy. Not at all.
It totally holds up. And the newer digital transfers are beautiful. We just watched it on Blu-ray, on your Blu-ray, which is immaculate. I watched it streaming through iTunes. I rented it through iTunes. It looks just as beautiful. So whatever they did for the digital transfer, they did it right. Warner Brothers doesn't have the best reputation for that. This one, they did it right. No, it's perfect. It's flawless. It looks like it was made this year.
Yeah,
and we'll be able to watch this one side by side with Fury Road, and it'll hold up. It'll be. I mean, Fury Road might even suffer to the comparison because it's tough to live up to this movie.
I agree 100%. I purchased the Blu-ray off of Amazon, and it was under $10. It's well worth the purchase. I mean, it does have a commentary by George Miller and Dean Semler, and it's one of the weaker commentaries. There is that introduction by Leonard Maltin that's a couple minutes, which is kind of nice, and they include the preview of the movie. But it's for me, it's worth it just to own it. I had not owned this on DVD. I had it on the VHS copy.
You did have a nice VHS copy.
I had the VHS letterbox copy, and then I had a digital version that I had gotten pirated off the internet just to have. But until I had gone on vacation to Florida, when I was watching it on my iPad on the flight down, I hadn't seen this movie in probably maybe 5 years. It had been a little bit of a gap, and I really welcome the return to it. There's a few movies that if a gap goes and I get a chance to see them again, they always hold up. They never let me down. Great movie. I really enjoyed this audio commentary. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, and perhaps you enjoy going and seeing Mad Max Fury Road this summer, drop Don and myself an email, or please take the time to write an iTunes review or give us a 5-star rating, which would help us out a lot in the search engines on iTunes.
We're on Twitter at SecretDuck922. We now have a presence on Facebook, so you can just look us up on Facebook. We have our regular blog page, which is down at hisamazingfriend.com.
That's correct.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
All we're asking is for a review on iTunes.
It could be 5 simple words. I really like this podcast.
You can even take out the word really. That's fine. 4 words. If you don't have an R, if your keyboard doesn't have an R.
If you're like James Caan in Misery, where you need Annie to write in the ends for you with pencil
Right.
on paper, sure, we could do it like that. I mean, as long as there's a 5-star rating attached to it, we'll take anything, to be honest with you. And again, I want to thank you for listening. And Don and his amazing friend, that was the last we ever saw of them. They live now, only in our memory.
In the future, cities will become deserts. Roads will become battlefields. And the hope of mankind will appear as a stranger. works alone against all odds. He may be the best chance we've got.
You want to get out of here? You talk to me.
The Road Warrior. Pray that he's out there. Somewhere.
And the Road Warrior. That was the last we ever saw of him. He lives now, only in my memory.